Erin's daughter was gender confused and has desisted, and Erin's very active in Our Duty and is going to talk to us about the situation in California and what the organisation does and what Erin, does as well. So welcome, Erin, and over to you.
Let's start with how I got involved with Our Duty and how I became an activist. And that started with my daughter coming out as transgender about 2.5 years ago. It was, the typical rapid onset gender dysphoria, no indication that she was gender nonconforming or confused at any time in her childhood. In fact, she was, I would say, grossly girly, pink and dresses and, very stereotypical feminine little child, and quite the opposite of me because I was the tomboy. But she got indoctrinated at her school in 7th grade through their sex ed class. And all of her friends, all of 5 of them, came home from the sex ed class and said that they were something on the alphabet, using terms that were well beyond what 11-year-olds should understand. Pansexual, polyamorous were some of the labels that these kids had picked. And that was the entrance point for me to figure out, what was going on at the school. And then about a year later, as COVID was raging, as she was lonely and on her computer all the time, she decided that she was now a boy. And after a year and a half of pulling her out of it, which, is a Herculean task with the onslaught of, transgenderism everywhere, especially here in California. You can't walk through a mall without signs of transgenderism at stores, makeup stores. We now even have a store dedicated in our mall to trans rights. Everything that is sold benefits the trans movement. So this is how they make more money. But luckily, I swam upstream. I did absolutely the opposite of what everybody told me to do. And I hit the gender piece pretty much straight on with my child. I held the line and I refused to call her by a male name. I refused to do any of the things that I was advised to do by, the therapists, the mental health people, and even people who had kids who were gender confused, told me to tiptoe around the issue, and I didn't. I went straight in. But she was young, so I could do that. She was only 13. But after that year and a half, which was sheer hell, it was sheer hell. I contemplated suicide myself, because watching my daughter die by 1,000 cuts as everyone's cheering this on was excruciating. And once I got her stable, I got angry. I got extremely angry, and I had to turn my anger into action. And I met these wonderful women at Sovereign Women in, I think it was, where we were in Washington State or Oregon. And they were all activists. And I thought you needed superpowers to be an activist. I thought you had to go to school for it. I thought there's some kind of rule book. And it was just some badass women saying no and doing it in all different ways. And then I stumbled on Our Duty, which is an international group, and it started in the UK. And I'm very grateful for Our Duty, because they didn't tether me to anything. They said, you want to be a co-lead, you want to do anything that you want to do in the United States, go and do it. There were no rules. There was no hierarchy, which freed me to try everything to attack this, gender ideology. So that's how I got involved in activism. I'm a lawyer by trade. no special skills in this except a willingness to fight and a fearlessness, because I believe that if we are afraid and we stay silent, we are complicit and we're just adding to the problem. And I know a lot of people are afraid of jobs and losing friends, losing their kids even. You're going to lose your child anyway if you stay silent. Part of, I think, their the reason why transgenderism grew so rapidly and so strongly is they told us to be afraid, and we should never be afraid. We should never be afraid when we're protecting women and children. Never. So that's my story in a nutshell. And I'm really pleased to announce that my daughter's 17 and she is back to being comfortable in her body. I'm almost a little bit too comfortable. I wish she wouldn't swing the other way so much. We went from binders to cleavage, you know? But I'll take that any day, the day of the week over the binders. So that's the story. Now, what our duty is doing in the United States is a little bit different than what our duty is doing across the globe. In the UK, our duty is more of a parent support group where parents can go and, share their pain and share their stories together. In the United States, we are an activist group. We already have a really strong parent group in the United States called Parents of ROGD Kids, and they take care of the hand-holding and the kindness. There's other groups called Oasis. They also take care of, when a parent is on the edge of losing their mind. These groups are wonderful. I look at our duty as we're the fighters, we're the militia. We're going out there and we're showing up and fighting these bills and reaching across the aisle because we're nonpartisan. We've got members who are lesbians and we have evangelicals. It doesn't matter. We're all in this fight together. We share that common need and thread to protect kids and protect women because it's all tied together. It's so important to watch what is happening in this state and all the Western states, because we created this mess and it has to end here first. So people like to just say California is never going to change. Well, if California never changes, if Oregon never changes, if Washington State never changes, then gender ideology will continue to live. So we have to kill it at its root. And I am so grateful for the women in the UK who really, I think, were at the forefront years ago, while we were sitting on our hands, kind of watching and not thinking that it would ever get that bad here. So thank you to all the women who have been fighting for years. I had no idea that this was even looming until it walked into my house. So here in California, we're seeing an onslaught of bills to harm women. And the latest one is about, and I call it Get Yourself a Baby. It is a bill that redefines fertility or infertility as anyone who cannot have a child as an individual. I mean, let that sink in for a second. Anyone who can't have a child on their own, which is every human being on the planet, because we can't clone ourselves. But this bill is passing, and it is, of course, going to harm children immensely, because these men who have fetishes about breastfeeding can get themselves a baby, and they can get it paid for by insurance companies. That's what the bill is. Renting a womb is $150,000. Now it will be free. And so this is going to hurt, all the women in California, all the poor women who are desperate to pay their rent. They can earn $50,000 by giving someone a baby, and there's no mental health checks required. There can't be any age discrimination. Let that sink in for a second. Age discrimination. So someone who is 65 can get themselves a baby. And there's no disability discrimination either. So that means someone who is an alcoholic or a quadriplegic can get themselves a baby. And this is one of many, many bills going on in California right now that are just designed to feed men's fetishes and to turn women into machines. That's what we are. We are valued for our body parts. Really quite horrendous. And they're also passing a bill where normally if a woman is beaten and she goes to the hospital, those medical providers are mandated reporters. That means they need to get law enforcement involved. They're passing a bill now that is repealing that. They only need to get law enforcement involved if there was a gun as part of the beating or the woman was shot. That's how much we're not valued anymore. We have to be near death before they'll get the police involved. And the most horrific thing, and this is, the people that are passing these bills, they are all part of the LGBTQ caucus. That means it is lesbians who are passing these bills. They are authoring these bills. Gay men are authoring these bills, which to me is a very frightening aspect of this, because those on the right are going to blame the gay community for this. And it makes it even more imperative for more of the gay community to stand up and be the face of anti-transgenderism. They have to be, because the right's not going to understand that that it's not a monolith of gay and lesbian people who are pushing this. So it's really important for every lesbian woman to show up at these hearings and be the face of the battle. So those are some of the really nasty bills that are really affecting women directly. And California is the 5th largest economy in the world. And it is shameful that these hearings and these legislators are not getting onslaughts of phone calls from women saying no, from men saying no. And I don't know how to outreach anymore to get people to light a fire under their rear ends, but people have to stand up. There's no excuse not to stand up at this point. And I do think that I don't know how it is in the UK right now, but it's safe to come out. It's safe to come out in your real name. And then we have more bills in California that are really directed at the kids and feeding the sex trafficking world. There's a bill that is permitting 12-year-olds to opt out of their family's home with no claim of abuse, no claim of self-harm, no claim of harm to others. They can go to a residential facility without any permission from mom and dad. They get to opt in. When would this happen? This is going to happen at the schools. The schools are the pipeline for gender confusion. So you take a 6th grader 12 goes into their school counselor and says, I think I'm trans. And that counselor will say, well, do you think your parents would approve? And the child says, no, I don't think so. Or would you like to stay at a residential facility? And that 12-year-old doesn't come home from school that day. That 12-year-old goes to a residential facility, which can be run by a community center. Code word for LGBTQ community, actually TQ community center, where that child gets further indoctrinated, where that child then is considered a runaway. The parents will have an indelible mark on their reputation, because why would a child run away from loving parents? So now Child Protective Services will investigate those parents. And once that child is in a residential facility, those are unlocked. They're unlocked here in California. They're unlocked in most states. And who hangs out in front of these places? Sex traffickers. And this is how they get their marks. Right now, pornography, the most watched pornography is transgender pornography. These kids are novelties, and you pump a little girl with testosterone and remove her breasts, and now you have, a fetish child that you can market. So it's really, really dark, and it's all tied together into sex trafficking, destruction of the family, and money. So what we do here in our duty is we highlight these bills, and we join forces with whoever will fight this. We don't care if they're a religious right group. We don't care if they're a radical feminist group. We link arms, because the only way we're going to be loud enough is if we all fight together. And when this is over, we can go into our separate corners, or maybe we'll actually learn from each other, which is my hope, is that we'll be more accepting and not silo ourselves anymore, and not be an us versus them anymore. So here in California, like I said, we've been testifying. We had probably 15 really nasty bills. And what gobsmacked us is we get 2 minutes. That's all we get to fight these bills, 2 minutes. And looking at the faces of these legislators, it's really clear to me that some are nefarious, some are evil and they know what they're doing. Others have no clue. It's like they're living under a rock. They have no clue about what is happening in the schools. They don't believe us when we tell them that there are transition closets in California where a kid can go to school in one outfit, change at school, put a dress on, spend the whole day in school dressed up as a female, change their clothes, and then go back home, and the parents are left in the dark. These legislators don't know that's happening. They don't know that CPS, Child Protective Services, is coming to visit parents if the parent doesn't affirm their child's gender identity. They don't know that these schools are giving out trans tape. This is tape that girls use to bind their breasts and boys use to tuck their genitals in between their legs. They don't know that this is happening. And it blows my mind that they're passing laws without knowing the facts. So it's a very important thing that people keep talking to lawmakers wherever they live, in whatever country, and start with the very basics. I always ask this question. 10 years ago, did you hear the word trans child? Did anybody hear that word trans child? Nobody did. Now, do you know someone who is a trans child, quote unquote? And they'll always say, yes, they do. And how many do you know? And that's the first opening to, there's something in the water, isn't there? And you have to start with the very, very basics. Explain to me how you can be born in the wrong body. How a sperm and an egg come together and make one human. How can you be born wrong? And this is where, you know, the lesbians and the gay people need to come in, is then I explain most gay males thought they were girls when they were little. That's what they thought. And same with lesbians, playing with boy things. Maybe you're a boy, and putting and framing it in the, you're transitioning, you're doing the ultimate conversion therapy by telling gay kids that there's something wrong with them. And are you okay with that? And, you know, another fact I bring up is Iran. You know, Iran, it's a death sentence if you're gay. So men transition. And all Americans, you know, frown on that. What a horrible, brutal thing to do. But they're not seeing the fact that they're doing it to kids here in the United States or across the world. They're taking gay kids and transitioning them, saying that it's not okay to be gay. And these are entrance points, if you live in a very liberal state, to get them thinking about the kindness factor. You have to take whatever arguments they like. Discrimination, again, the bill about buy a baby. Whose bodies are they using to buy the babies or get the babies for free? They're using poor Hispanic women. You bring up racism, like this bill is actually racist. Same with the women who are beaten and there's no mandated reporting anymore. The police are not going to get involved. Who are the women in these abusive relationships? Who are these women walking the streets with pimps? A lot of times there are Black and brown women. And so you push the argument, this is a racist bill. You have to take their arguments and flip them. It's the only way they can comprehend what they're actually doing. We've got a terribly frightening bill that is passing that will redefine what is in the best interest of the health, welfare, and safety of a child. Health, welfare, and safety are magical words in the US, and I'm sure elsewhere in the world. When you're deciding where a child, the custody of a child, or whether it's safe for a child to live even with their biological parents, they always look at health, welfare, and safety of the child. We have a bill passing that defines health, welfare, and safety of a child as gender affirmation. So a judge doesn't have discretion to give custody of a child to a parent who doesn't affirm that child's gender identity. And it doesn't matter how ridiculous that gender identity is. It could be autism gender. It could be demi-boy. We even have a Prius gender, Toro, which is half man, half woman. The parent needs to affirm this. It doesn't matter if the child, how old the child is. The child could be 3. They need to affirm it. And then what does affirmation mean? It's undefined in our laws. Does it mean a haircut, a name and a pronoun, or does it mean you have to remove your daughter's breasts in order to be an affirming parent? We are rapidly moving in the blue states to laws that will force parents to transition their kids or lose custody of their children. That's what they want. That's where they're going. We are at a critical moment in time in the United States to fight this. Everyone needs to be fighting this, and everyone needs to be looking at the bills. And it's boring, but you have to look at the bills that are being proposed in your state. If the bill has something to do with mental health, that should be a red flag that this is a problem bill.
Is the Human Rights Campaign influencing politicians in California? Are they active there?
Yes, there's a group too called Equity California, and there's an Equity Florida, Equity Minnesota. Though that is the biggest lobby group with in any of the states, but HRC is massive. So HRC 10 years ago brought in, I think, about $9 million. Now they're up to $78 million. And their liabilities are only about $1 or $2 million. So what are they doing with that other $76 million? They are pushing politicians. And they're doing it. They're not doing it directly. I don't ever see HRC as a sponsor of a bill. I see the equity groups, Equity California. I see the GLSENs, GLADs, Gender Spectrum as supporters of these bills. But that money has to be pouring back into these politicians. It just has to be. There's just too much money out there, and everyone's getting a little piece of this.
We heard last week that the Equality and Diversity czar, or sort of promoter in Germany, has a budget of, I think it's 60 million euros a year. He's just got it to promote that. So it's possibly a similar thing, that some of that money will go in lobbying and encouraging lawmakers and decision makers to be positive to the changes. Yeah.
And they're funding. Remember how I talked about the residential facilities? So they're funding those, and so you have these kids graduating with gender studies, and they can't get jobs, so they give them jobs. They're funding mental health social workers. They're pouring money into them because these are the incubators. They're churning out indoctrinators, and then they're putting them in the schools, and then they're paying them through the schools. The tax dollars that are being spent on this are in the billions, and we don't even know it. There's a fund for $14 million in California for they call it TGI, transgender, gender nonconforming, intersex. There's not an intersex group that's getting any of this money. There's not a lesbian group that's getting this money. It's all the trans groups. I think this is illegal. I have to look at the law a little bit deeper, but we're spending $600,000 to start a fund. And then we're going to take donations, and HRC will donate, some of their millions. And California is going to have a advertising blitz in other states.
Wow, spreading it.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not enough to do it in California. And of course, they're targeting they target the red states, and they target rural areas. Please reach out to me and join. And in any state, actually, reach out to me at erin.friday@yahoo, and I'll put you on the calls to action. There's a call to action that goes out to the US group, and then there's calls to action that goes out to the California groups. Everyone is anonymous. I am the only one who sees anybody's email. I'm the only one who can send out an email. So it's not going to be, you're not going to have flooded emails. It's once a month, twice a month, but it will, sometimes it's a one-click campaign, and I steal from WDI. Thank you. I forward out your campaigns. But if anybody wants to join the calls to action, I'll never know if you did it. I'll never know. And if you don't agree with the call to action, you don't have to do it. And like I said, there's no shame in not doing it. I hope you do all of them. It would be amazing. Because there is a wave right now. There is a momentum here in the US. We're finally sort of catching up to the UK. But there is a wave, and we need to even fight even faster and harder. So please, Erin.Friday@Yahoo, that's my personal account. I have no problem sharing it. Go to ourduty.group for simple fact sheets about gender ideology. If you don't know what to say, if you don't know the stats, learn them. We always have to be completely correct when we're in our arguments. So please use our website. And I wanted to say just thank you. Thank you for all you amazing women. Thank you.